two titans on the rise. The year is 2014, and mixed martial arts, MMA, is rapidly evolving, drawing in fans from across the world. The UFC, the pinnacle of this sport, has seen the rise of new stars, but in the realm of lightweight fighting, two names stood out. Khabib Nurmagomedov, an undefeated Dagestani wrestler, and Rafael dos Anjos, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu ace with a flair for striking, were both primed to leave their mark on the division. Their paths were about to cross in a highly anticipated battle at UFC on Fox 11, set to take place on April 19, 2014. But before they stepped into the octagon, each fighter had a unique story that had brought them to this moment. Khabib Nurmagomedov, the Eagle, ascends. Khabib was born into a world where discipline, hard work, and wrestling were second nature. Growing up in the rugged mountains of Dagestan, he was exposed to a rich tradition of martial arts from an early age. His father, a former wrestler himself, was not one to let his son waste a minute. By the time Khabib was old enough to walk, he was already training in combat sports. Wrestling was a way of life in his village, and Khabib excelled in the art, quickly gaining recognition on national and international stages. But Khabib wasn't just any wrestler. He brought a level of intensity and aggression that set him apart. His undefeated streak in MMA was growing with each victory, and his all-encompassing grappling style made him an unstoppable force. In the lead-up to his clash with Dos Anjos, Khabib was a rising star who was quickly being heralded as one of the best wrestlers the lightweight division had ever seen. In the cage, Khabib's style was relentless. Once he took his opponent down, it was often a matter of when, not if, he would impose his will. His control on the ground, along with his brutal ground and pound, made him a terrifying presence. No opponent was safe, and many were left wondering if anyone could match his grappling skills. He was a man on a mission with a singular focus to remain undefeated. Rafael dos Anjos, a warrior of two worlds. On the other side of the octagon stood a man who, while also an expert grappler, possessed a diverse skill set that made him a true, well-rounded fighter. Rafael dos Anjos hailed from the favelas of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where he was introduced to martial arts as a young boy. His initial training was in jiu-jitsu, but as he got older, he expanded his game, eventually becoming a complete fighter, capable of dominating opponents on the feet and the ground. By the time Dos Anjos entered the UFC, he was already making a name for himself. His jiu-jitsu was world-class, but what truly set him apart was his evolution into a formidable striker. He had a brutal Muay Thai clinch, and his punches packed power. With every fight, he improved and showed more dimensions to his game, winning fans over with his relentless aggression and warrior spirit. Leading up to the Khabib fight, Dos Anjos was determined to continue climbing the ranks in the lightweight division. He had faced some of the toughest opponents in the world and had learned from each battle. What made Dos Anjos so dangerous was his adaptability. He was not just going to try to out-wrestle Khabib or match him at his own game. He would fight fire with fire and force Khabib to respect his striking. The build-up to battle. The anticipation for this fight had been building for months. Both fighters had a mutual respect for each other's skills, but it was clear that Khabib's dominant wrestling had put a target on his back. Dos Anjos, however, wasn't intimidated. He viewed Khabib as a challenge, a chance to prove that he was not just another wrestler who could control the fight. He trained hard, sharpening his striking and grappling, and preparing himself to stop Khabib's signature takedowns. As the fight neared, the tension was palpable. The MMA world knew this fight had the potential to change the trajectory of the lightweight division. If Khabib won, he would continue to solidify himself as the next title contender. But if Dos Anjos emerged victorious, it would be a massive statement, proving he could not only handle Khabib's wrestling, but beat him at his own game. Their respective fight camps were intense. Khabib spent months in the mountains of Dagestan, focusing on his wrestling and conditioning. His camp was minimalist, surrounded by a small, tight-knit team that had supported him through his journey. The sparring was brutal, and the focus was sharp. Khabib's mind was singular, destroy Dos Anjos. On the other side, Dos Anjos trained with a mixture of sparring partners, incorporating boxing, Muay Thai, and Jiu-Jitsu. His camp had been focused on staying sharp in every area, hoping that his striking and adaptability would give him the edge. He knew that Khabib's wrestling was ferocious, but he was confident that he could outstrike him and avoid the takedowns that were so dangerous. The night of the fight, UFC on Fox 11. April 19, 2014, arrived. The UFC on Fox 11 was held at the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida. The atmosphere was electric, with fans packing the arena to see the lightweight clash. As the fighters made their way to the octagon, the tension could be cut with a knife. Khabib, wearing his traditional black shorts, walked in with the calmness of a man who had seen it all before. On the other hand, Dos Anjos, in his blue trunks, had the intensity of a fighter who knew this was his moment to prove that he belonged in the upper echelons of the lightweight division. The fight began. Round 1, a clash of styles. Khabib wasted no time in implementing his game plan. From the opening bell, he was in Dos Anjos' face. His relentless pressure and forward movement were immediately evident. Dos Anjos, who had trained specifically for this moment, was ready to strike and counter, but had to constantly fight off Khabib's clinch attempts. Khabib's timing was impeccable. He shot for the takedown early, and though Dos Anjos scrambled and fought back with everything he had, Khabib's wrestling overpowered him. Khabib was on top, controlling the Brazilian on the ground, unleashing his patented ground and pound. Dos Anjos, to his credit, fought valiantly from the bottom, looking for submission opportunities and trying to escape, but Khabib's top control was suffocating. Dos Anjos couldn't find his rhythm in the first round. The first 5 minutes were dominated by Khabib's wrestling, and while Rafael was still dangerous, it was clear that the first round belonged to the undefeated Russian. Round 2, Dos Anjos' resilience. The second round started with Dos Anjos showing more urgency. He knew that Khabib had the wrestling advantage, but if he wanted to win, he would have to turn the fight into a striking battle. He began to open up more, landing a few sharp strikes. His jab was finding its mark, and he had Khabib momentarily backing up. However, Khabib's smothering style and pressure were relentless. Khabib was still scoring with his takedowns, but Dos Anjos showed his heart and resilience. He fought from bottom with all the submission attempts and sweeps he could muster, but Khabib's ground game was too much. The round remained competitive, but Khabib's wrestling and pressure continued to neutralize Adesanya's offense.